Hi everyone, in this video we're told to simplify the following and state any restrictions on variables. So the first thing that we're going to do is we've got all these rational expressions, and in A we're asked to simplify x squared plus 10x plus 21 divided by x plus 7. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what the factors of the numerator and denominator are. And to figure out the factors, I can just factor the numerator. The numerator factors to x plus 7 times x plus 3 divided by x plus 7. So x plus 7 is both a factor of the numerator and it's also a factor of the denominator. So that factor x plus 7 divides out. But before I can reduce it, I have to write down the restriction that x cannot be equal to negative 7. Because if x is equal to negative 7, I have negative 7 plus 7, which is 0, which would give me division by 0, which is undefined. So x cannot be equal to minus 7. So I have to write out that restriction, and this reduces to x plus 3. And finally, I'll write out the restriction that I wrote down on the side. This expression is equivalent to x plus 3 with the restriction that x cannot be equal to negative 7. In example B, we're told to simplify 6x cubed minus 7x squared minus 5x, all divided by 3x squared plus x over, or 3x squared plus x minus 10. So to simplify this expression, we'll factor both the numerator and denominator. So the numerator, there's a common factor of x. So first off, common factor out x. Now I'd have 6x squared minus 7x minus 5. So let's write that down. 6x squared minus 7x minus 5 divided by 3x squared plus x minus 10. Now, 6x squared minus 7x minus 5 and 3x squared plus x minus 10, we've got to try to factor. And we can factor using guess and check. So first, let's factor the numerator. So these two terms I know have to multiply to get 6x squared. So let's try 3x and 2x. Because 3x and 2x multiply to 6x squared. Now I need two values in this position and this position that multiply to negative 5. So two numbers that multiply to negative 5 are, well, I've got either negative 1 and 5 or negative 5 and 1, and I could put them in either of these two positions. So if I put minus 5 here and plus 1 here, then negative 5 times positive 1 gives me negative 5. And let's check. We have to check to make sure the middle term is correct, because the middle term is going to be will consist of multiplying negative 5 times 2x, which is negative 10x, plus 3x times positive 1, which is 3x. So I've got negative 10x minus 3x, which is minus 7x. So I've factored this correctly. In the denominator, I've got to do the same thing. I need two numbers, or two terms in these two positions that multiply to give me 3x squared. So you might have guessed already that these terms are 3x and x. Now I also need a term here and here that multiply to give me minus 10. So let's try, I don't know, let's try positive 5 and minus 2. Now we have to check to make sure that the middle term is correct. So the middle term will come from multiplying positive 5 times x. So I've got positive 5 times x minus 2 times 3x. So I've got positive 5x minus 6x, which is negative x. So that doesn't give me the correct middle term. But notice that if I just switch the signs here, my middle term would be 6x minus 5x, which is positive x. So now that I've factored both the numerator and denominator, I can divide out some factors. And there's a factor of 3x minus 5 is both a factor of the numerator and it's a factor in the denominator. So I can divide 3x minus 5 by 3x minus 5. And that factor divides out. Okay, so this expression will simplify to x times 2x plus 1 over x plus 2. But there's a restriction on x here because I've divided out this factor of 3x minus 5. In order for this line to be equivalent, an equivalent expression to this expression, it has to have the same restrictions on x. So the restrictions on x in this case would be, well, let's think about this. When is 3x minus 5 equal to 0? 3x minus 5 is equal to 0 when 3x is equal to 5. If I divide both sides of this equation, I find that 3x minus 5 is equal to 0 when x is equal to 5 over 3. So I have the restriction that x cannot be equal to 5 over 3, but also x can't be negative 2 because negative 2 plus 2 would give me 0 for this factor, and I'd have division by 0 again. So x can't be 5 over 3 or minus 2. So my new expression is x times 2x plus 1 divided by x plus 2 with the restriction that x cannot be equal to 5 over 3 or negative 2. In the next example, we're asked to simplify 4x squared minus 8x minus 32 over 2x squared minus 2x minus 24. So let's look at how to simplify this expression. The first step is to factor the numerator and factor the denominator. Notice that here there's a common factor in the numerator because 4x squared minus 8x and minus 32 all have a factor of 4. In the denominator, all of these terms are even, so they're all divisible by 2. So let's first do some common factoring to reduce the size of the numbers that we're factoring with. In the numerator, I've got 4 times x squared minus 2x minus 8. In the denominator, I've got 2 times x squared minus x minus 12. Now, already I can do some dividing out, and because 4 and 2 don't have any variable terms, immediately I can just simplify this and reduce 4 over 2 to just being 2 in the numerator. So I can divide out a factor of 2. Now let's simplify. In the same step, we can factor x squared minus 2x minus 8 and x squared minus x minus 12. So this is equal to 2 times, well, let's think about what x squared minus 2x minus 8 factors to. Since there's a coefficient of 1 beside the quadratic term, or beside the x squared term, I can factor this by saying what two numbers multiply to negative 8 and add to negative 2. And you probably already figured out that the two numbers are minus 4 and positive 2 that multiply to negative 8 and add to negative 2. In the denominator, I can factor it again because there's a coefficient of 1 beside the quadratic term or beside the x squared term. I can factor it by saying what two numbers multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 1. So again, you've probably already figured out that the factors are x minus 4 and x plus 3. So now that we can divide out there's a factor of negative 4 that that is a factor, or there's a factor of x minus 4 in the numerator and a factor of x minus 4 in the denominator as well. So we can divide out a factor of x minus 4. But again, we have to make sure that we write the restrictions. The restrictions on x are that x cannot be equal to positive 4 and negative 3. And that's because if x is positive 4, we have 4 minus 4, which is 0, and that would give us division by 0 in the denominator. If x were negative 3, we'd have this factor would be negative 3 plus 3, which would give us division by 0 as well. So we have to restrict the variables. This now reduces to 2 times x plus 2 divided by x plus 3, where x is restricted to not be equal to 4 or negative 3. In the next video, we'll look at simplifying more rational expressions.